Hey everyone, it is George Couros, and I'm actually going to answer some viewer questions today. And I know that I had some awesome music, but got a little copyright issues. So you're just going to have to do the music in your head. And I can't sing it because even if you sing it, you actually get some copyright issues. But I just wanted to kind of pop on here. I've been traveling and speaking, met so many of you, and I like having a little conversation and sharing some ideas and insights based on what your questions are. And today I'm going to actually answer a question from Mark, and I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability, so my perspective. When I share any of these questions, understand, I don't think there's only one way to address any of these things. I think this is just my perspective. So I would love to know what your answers are, and you can post that in the comments down below, or share this, somewhere and share some of your insights as well, because I think we really create something beautiful when we all share our learning, some of our insights, and then we kind of mix and match and kind of figure out there. And so here's the question. And so I'm going to share it with you. And like I said, I hope that maybe before you even listen to me, write your comment down below and share what you would say to this answer. And Mark asked this question: what are three things a veteran teacher needs to embrace in instruction or student learning to stay relevant and keep students engaged? And so when he says this, I don't think it's a veteran teacher question specifically. Maybe it is for Mark. But I think at any point, if you look at these things, because here's something I want you to really consider. There's this idea that when all these younger teachers come into the profession, all of a sudden they'll be using all these new tools, new things, and we'll just get all the older teachers out of here. And I'm an old guy, so I'm not a big fan of that insight, but it's actually very inaccurate. And here's why I would challenge that. We often teach the way we were taught, unless we change our experience significantly. And I think that to me is something that really, really matters, is how do we actually really rethink how we teach and learn. I actually just posted this on Instagram today. It's from a talk I just did recently, and I said a culture of innovation for students cannot be created through a culture of compliance for adults. You cannot you cannot change the learning experience for students until you really think about how it changes for adults. And so the insight that once these new teachers come in, they're going to do things differently because they grew up in a different time, but it depends on what their classroom experience was like. And that to me really, really matters. And the example I always give is that how this is replicated. You've probably all heard, maybe even said this comment: the bell doesn't dismiss you, I dismiss you, right? And I didn't make that up, but I've said it. And so that is just kind of a proof that basically over time, things are just passed down from generation to generation to generation. And some of the more veteran teachers that I've met are some of the most innovative, forward-thinking people that I've ever connected with. The reason I believe that is true is because they have lots of experience, they have lots of comfort level with the work that they're doing, that they're more willing to take some risks. Whereas when you are newer to the profession, you might be a little bit nervous, you're trying to get your footing, and at least that's how I felt when I first started teaching. And I really replicated a lot of what was I experienced in the classroom. So I don't think this is a question that specifically only relates to veteran teachers, but really thinking about how does this pertain to anyone in the profession, whether you're teaching students or adults. And so again, the question, and I'll go back to this and share your insights in the comments down below. What are three things a veteran teacher needs to embrace in instruction or student learning to stay relevant and keep students engaged? And Mark, thank you so much for the question. You'll be receiving a signed book coming your way. So I wrote down three things that really kind of connected with me, that were my first insights to this. And like I said, my answers are just some of my perspective. There's obviously a lot of things that we know. So the first one is to know your students. And it's really interesting because I see kind of this pushback on relationships on social media, like, oh, have you tried relationships? And it's not, first of all, when you say something like that, imagine like your boss not caring about you as a human being, right? Especially in education, where it's very overwhelming emotionally. We would never want that, but there's this kind of sarcastic response to this. And I can understand it, to be honest with you. that you think that when some people hear the term relationships and really kind of knowing who your students are, they kind of have this fluffy feeling, right? Like this all like, oh, let's all be best friends. That's not what I'm talking about at all. It is really kind of understanding who your students are, what their experience are, what their strengths are, and also what do they respond to. So, for example, uh, I I I like public praise. I'm not gonna lie. If someone says something really nice about me, it makes me feel good. I remember working with a colleague of mine. She was actually my assistant principal when I was a principal, and if you did that to her, she would hate you. She'd be so mad. She just wanted to kind of be behind the scenes, didn't want the attention, and things like that. And it was almost embarrassing to her. And so the relationship piece is not doing the same thing and just being all like the cuddly guy at all. It is really kind of knowing, what brings out the best in people. Phil Jackson, probably my favorite coach of all time. He coached, I think he's won, 6, 9, 11 championships off the top of my head. You can double check that. He won 6 with the Bulls and 5 with the Lakers. And one of the things that he was really adamant about was knowing every person's strengths and how they contributed to the team and really kind of finding that value. And one of the things he did, which I thought was really interesting, he'd always buy his players books, but he wouldn't buy everyone the same book. He'd buy something very unique to what they were. And what he wanted to do is get them to be part of a larger whole. What is your role on that team? And that is kind of how I look at relationships. You have to kind of understand what people bring to the table, how they contribute to your spaces. It's not just treat everyone the same and we're always being nice, right? Some students I worked with, they were very shy, didn't want, public attention, and you'd have conversations inside and you just learn those things about them. And so the other thing that I talk about why your students is really what are their strengths? What things do they bring to the table? And I know when Mark asked this question, really it's starting back from the student and going from there. And as you go, how do you develop this? This is true at the administration level as well. One of the things I just shared with a group in Tennessee, and I've shared this a million times, that if I was to be a new principal, I would change nothing upon entering a school. My goal, first of all, would be to know every staff member, know what their strengths are, and ensure that they know I know what their strengths are. Because when people feel valued, they will fight for you. But if people think you're coming there to fix them and just kind of do what you think you should be doing, that's when they fight you. And so I think really kind of moving from strengths and things like MTSS, response to intervention, you hear those things, and I never have any issue with those things, but our approach sometimes is where I struggle. We often try to find out what a kid sucks at, what they're really bad at, and then try to fix them, as opposed to like, what is this person's strength? Like, how do we actually bring out the best in them? And it's not about ignoring their weaknesses, it's just about starting with strengths, ensuring they feel valued. So that's one of the suggestions that I would actually have. And I'll give you a little tangible idea for this. So if you have a kid in your class who wants to be a YouTuber, right? And you got to teach a science curriculum, could you actually have the kid, for example, make a video explaining a concept in the science curriculum? So they might not become a scientist, which, the majority of our kids, I hate to tell you this, do not become scientists. But there's really important things in science that every kid should actually know. Could you actually build that kid's strength where they're more interested in what they're doing because they're seeing some long-term opportunities in what they're doing in your class and something they're really interested in, but you're still teaching that curriculum. It's not one or the other, but how you combine the two. That's where the innovation really happens. So the second one I shared is like when you're staying relevant, this one's kind of an easy one for me, is you have to have a willingness to learn, right? If you feel that you are at a place where you've taught long enough that you don't need to learn anymore, probably time to go. It's probably not your time anymore. And, I try to progress. There's things that I do that I've done for like 10, 15 years, like blogging, things like that. But, I'm really trying to learn artificial intelligence, dive into ChatGPT, different things. So I can always kind of understand what are some opportunities that we learn. When I've heard this conversation before, and I think it's kind of interesting. When someone says to me, I'm not good at technology, what are they really saying, right? And in reality, sometimes what they're saying is that I'm not really good at learning because I don't want to push buttons to see what happens. And the thing with technology that's really fascinating to me is that if you are comfortable just kind of pressing buttons, you will always stay relevant. You'll always be comfortable. But any technology that we learn, it changes all the time. There's updates, there's, platform changes. To If you're comfortable with it, that changes the constant, and you just got to kind of figure out, where's the button now? Where do I press it? And to kind of understand some of the experience our kids have, right? Like if I say, hey, we want that kid to make a video, are you comfortable even giving that suggestion? Or you're like, no, I don't want to do that because I'm not comfortable with it. Now, here's another part in this too. When I say like have a willingness to learn, not everything that is done in your class with the people you serve is actually something you have to teach explicitly. I'll give you an example of my own practice. I teach a graduate course with UPenn, and I basically say, here's a question, but I want you to share your learning in different ways. So you can, write something, you can make a video, you can do a podcast, do whatever, right? But I need to understand the concept, but try to share it in different ways and try things that you're comfortable with and try things that you're uncomfortable with. So through that process, because my focus is on, do they actually answer the question? But I want them to kind of understand different mediums and how they can utilize different things. What's really fascinating about it, so many times in that class, some of my students, and I'm pretty comfortable with technology, will do things I've never seen before, never heard of. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. I loved how they did that. And then I go and learn it from them. I didn't explicitly teach them the steps. And when you have that willingness to learn, it doesn't mean that you know everything, but you're open to embracing new opportunities and trying different things. And you create a culture where in your classroom, whether it's with adults, whether it's kids, that if you put kids in a situation, or you put the learners in a situation where they can share some of their gifts and talents and you learn from them too, you'll always be relevant. I just got this question just a couple days ago. And it's something I want you to really think about. If I was to ask you 10 years from now, what do you see as a big opportunity in education, or something that will change education? What would your answer be? And I know what my answer would be, and I know my answer would be the same as it was 10 years ago, as it will be 10 years from now. I have no clue, and neither do you. What I know is that no matter what happens 10 years from now, I'll be able to figure it out because I have that willingness to learn. I have that willingness to grow. And I guess I should add a little caveat. 10 years from now, if I'm not willing to learn, I shouldn't be involved in education anymore. I shouldn't be involved in teaching and learning. I shouldn't do this at all, because if I'm not willing to grow, then it's time to go. Simple as that. That's kind of how I look at it. So Mark, that willingness to learn will always keep you relevant, because it doesn't mean you know everything, but you're willing to learn anything. So I think that's something that really matters. The last example, and Mark, he gave me three. He said, give me three things. So I'm giving you three. So the last one I wrote is this: focus more on starting with their questions, not only providing answers. And here's something that I think about quite a bit. There's a lot of people that will share content doesn't matter. It's more about creation. But I think it's really both. And you have to have a really good understanding of your content to be a teacher, to effectively teach something. But it doesn't mean you just disperse that information in a very linear way, but knowing it really, really well. So one of the things that I do is I'll share some ideas with groups that I work with and kind of give them some big general ideas, some general thinking. But then I'll say, okay, I want you to take some time to reflect. What's one big question you have? What's something that you want to learn based on what I was talking about today? And what's something you want to try? So what I'll do is I'll give people a break, but then I'll look through their questions, and immediately I will actually start to give them some ideas based on what I'm thinking and kind of go from that space. For me to have the ability to do that, I have to know my content really, really well. But I think the other part of it too is that people feel more appreciated and more interested when they actually hear their names and their questions are actually being, directly answered by you. Or sometimes it's like, hey, I don't even know. Maybe we should kind of explore this together, because I don't know when I work with a group what they know and what they don't know. And so I'm trying to elicit that. But when we kind of just try to share as much as possible, hoping to hit as many people as possible, that might not be the best approach. We want to really kind of stoke that curiosity where people are asking questions. So let's say in your classroom, you share some ideas and insights, and then you ask your students, hey, what questions do you have? And kind of go through that and maybe give them a chance to explore that, maybe answer that directly. But there's more of an onus if you're basically basing it on what they're curious about only on what you simply want to teach. And here's the kind of interesting thing about this. You're still going to teach the curriculum. You're still going to teach the process. Every time I do this, like I said, I give some general insights. We kind of stay on topic, but now I'm going back from what their questions are to sharing some of these ideas, as opposed to just hoping that I, hit what they want, what they should be learning, whether they know it or not. So again, the 3 things I wrote were: know your students. Really, what are strengths? Doesn't mean that it's not the fluffy relationship thing. It's really kind of like, how do we tap into the abilities of the people we serve? Have that willingness to learn. And it doesn't mean you know everything, but it's that willingness to learn whatever you can. Because I think if you do that, if you're always willing to learn, you'll always be relevant. And then focus more on starting with their questions, not only providing answers. So whether you're in your first year or your 50th year of education, I think these things are really, really relevant. And, even think about this podcast, I hope it's kind of modeling something that I just said, because I actually, instead of just, talking about whatever, and, I can do that as well. I'm trying to go back from some of your questions. What are the things that you would really benefit from that you're sharing? And so, like, I saw this question, but it was similar to another question from another participant. I said, okay, this is something that, people are asking. So maybe this is more beneficial when I'm starting back from someone's question and moving back from there. So just some insights that I wanted to share with you. I hope you found some value in this. I'd love to know how you'd answer this question. What are 3 things a teacher needs to embrace in student learning to stay relevant and keep students engaged? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please feel free to share them down in the comments below. If you have the opportunity, like and subscribe if you like this. If you didn't like it, don't hit that on, even though no one can see it, it still bugs me, but whatever. Anyways, I'm messing around. Thanks for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.